Y'all, Wizard101 just did something that they haven't done in their entire 14 years of existence. This is probably the one part of Wizard101 Test Realm that nobody's talking about. But if you opened up Test Realm and you looked at the intro cinematic, it is vastly different than what they've done for the past 14 years. This is a new intro cinematic. If you haven't seen it, you're in for a craziness. So see, it starts off all normal and whatnot, and then BOP! There you go. There's a whole new logo. It's kind of nuts. And obviously, yes, a reimagined logo, a reimagined intro cinematic, that is really, really cool. But when I saw all the places that this was posted, the one top comment that I always saw pop up is, will there be a way to use classic mode to have the original intro cinematic? And I don't know, I've been thinking about this since I saw these comments, and I really think what this does is it exposes a really unique problem that only Wizard101 has to deal with as a game. Wizard101's foundation, in my opinion, is built on nostalgia. This is a game that people will go to for comfort because of how they used to experience the game in the past. And as things keep changing more and more, I think complaints like this, where, you know, they'll change something literally for the better. There's no way to argue that a new cinematic isn't better. Even something that's better will still be construed as a negative by some parts of the community. And you can call me a psychologist for this one, but I actually don't think people's issue is with the cinematic. I think it's with the game changing and being hard to keep up with it. And I think if I had to go through the past year in review, I think this is an issue that Wiz needs to do better with, especially when they're actually doing really cool stuff like adding a cinematic. I think every time something in the game changes, there needs to be more work put into the transition process for people that are older, actually, you know, easing into it. I think it's actually been years since Wizard101 added something that's truly beneficial to the game while keeping the old feel of the game intact for the player. Right, when they retextured all of Wizard101, they made it so that you can literally switch to the old way things looked using classic mode. And for a lot of people, this is how they like playing the game. Do I like this? I mean, I don't really care that much. Like, some of the textures, especially you know, Ravenwood, are so donkey doo-doo that this is more of something that I like as an option. I love this, but I wouldn't default on it because look at this man's. Look at his crusty face. But while crusty mode is often on-toggleable, there seems to be very, very little of that, or even extra tools to deal with changes that are complicated nowadays. I think this process started a long time ago, by the way, but remember when they changed how your character looked? This was a big issue for people because how the character looks right now is not how character models looked before. And while it's objectively a very, very good change for the game, a lot of people were like, damn, I kind of miss how my old stuff used to look. There are many, many examples of this for returning players, and I'm sure, you know, if you do combat as a returning player, you'll notice this. The Arch Mastery system, when you literally see the pips look different, it looks like a very, very complicated game all of a sudden, even though Arch Mastery was a very, very cool update. All of the new spells that they've added, while they do some really, really crazy new things, there's very, very little explanation for the symbols, so it looks very, very complicated and different. And I think the complaints about the new logo, however small they might seem on the surface, I think they're deeply connected to a much bigger issue, which is the fact that when they change the game, even if it is improvement, Wizard101 very specifically, this is not something every other game has to do. It either needs a way to toggle back to a classic version like they did with the Wizard City retexture, or it needs much, much more involved ways of actually transitioning the player towards a more complicated playstyle. I've talked about this at length before, but I really believe that there needs to be way better explanation of what cards do in Wiz. There needs to be a way better explanation for Arch Mastery because clearly there's a messaging error. Clearly, there are still many, many people that don't know how Arch Mastery even works. If you've done the last boss of Novus and Team Up, I'm sure you've encountered people that don't know how to change their pips. I personally do not prefer a game without spells that do really, really cool extra stuff. Like a world where Minnow is just a double hit would be kind of stupid in my opinion. And I think Arch Mastery is one of the best changes that Wizard101 has ever added into the game. I genuinely think this does so much good for the game, especially at higher level. But the second it feels too complicated or it feels a little too foreign, you'll always have people that you'll lose on the way to a good game happening. A lot of people have talked about how, you know, between the arcs, maybe they would actually prefer a quality of life change. This is something that I see a lot more because the pace of changes is so fast that even for people that play very, very often, it feels hard to keep up. And honestly, I'm so on board with that. I would gladly take, instead of a gauntlet for the spring update or a raid for the summer update, I would love if they just, you know, made the game a little bit more palatable for people that are returning, and also just fixed all the glitches that happen in this game kind of regularly. In PvP anyways, there's many, many that come to mind, right? There's display errors, there's rounding error to this day, there's a shadow pip glitch that I don't know why it exists, but it does. There's random glitches where you just won't get chat chance. And while they fix those glitches, maybe they could also add better, like, you know, ways to ease the player into things like Arch Mastery, better ways to explain what spells do. I think an update like that is extremely needed, and I don't think that they're taking that type of, you know, update really that seriously, because I think they're so, like, you know, they're putting out all this content and it's cool and people are excited. But I do think no matter how you look at it, at a pace like this, something like that is needed. I think it would be one of the best updates Wiz could do in recent years. Just something that helps our quality of life, even for just one season, as in terms of an update. I'm not saying like the winter update next year, they need to not do a world for this, but you know, like, I really would rather have that than a gauntlet or a raid. That's just me personally. I think there is a disclaimer with this. Even if Wiz takes all of the advice in this video of making, you know, transitions to newer systems better, this game is evolving and growing in a way that I've never seen it before. There's some insanely good changes like gear accessibility that's coming in the Wallaroo update that shows that they're learning lessons and updating how they look at and value things, even in a year's time span, right? So there's really a lot happening. And no matter what they do in terms of easing the player into things, there will be stuff that feels foreign. And I hope that the community becomes more accepting of that, especially if at least at base value, this is still the game that they used to play. I've realized recently that I need to work on this issue too, because in PvP, they're adding stuff that I know in the long run is probably going to work out, but right now, we're in like this little transition period that is frustrating beyond belief, like genuinely awful, tilting beyond anything I've experienced. But you know, if I keep in mind that there's a reason these changes are happening, maybe I could be more accepting of it, especially if they add systems that make it easier to adapt to all the new things they're adding. And I have no doubt in my mind that Wiz is headed towards some balance of that nostalgic feel while also retaining some of the newer things that they've added recently. But they do definitely need to do better if that's the goal, and that's kind of why I want to make this video. It's somewhat about the logo, but really about the feelings around it. Let me know what you guys think of stuff like the logo, right? Are you like me and you're like, yo, it's a cool new logo, I love it? Or do you feel like the game's changing and becoming more foreign with each update? And how do you think Wiz could combat that feeling? I think it's a much more interesting discussion than just, you know, new things bad, nostalgia good. So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new. If all I did in this video is show you that there's a dope new logo, great. But I do think there's a lot to talk about here. I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments. Stay awesome, see y'all soon. And yeah.